Hi everybody and welcome back to Age Gap Love Story. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Alan.
And we are a married couple with a 32.5-year age difference. And welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be talking about recovering from divorce and tips for second marriages. And Alan is divorced. This is his second marriage with me. And we actually got this question from a viewer about how to prepare. This person who emailed us said that he had been in a contentious first marriage. He was recently divorced and his new girlfriend is much younger, and he wanted some tips to make sure that he was ready for a second relationship and maybe even a second marriage. So we did some research and we put together some tips based on Alan's experience and my, research on relationships and stuff like that. And we put this together for you guys. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And if you would like to be part of our community, be sure to check the show notes because we have a private Facebook group, we have an Instagram, and we also have a website and an email list. So feel free to connect with us where all of our handles are Age Gap Love Story, including our website. So let's talk about how to recover from divorce, and then we'll jump into some tips for successful second or maybe third marriages. So here are some practical and mental health tips for recovering from divorce. And maybe Alan can talk about some of his personal experiences about what you went through when you got divorced too. So do you want to jump into the first tip?
I will jump in on the first tip.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, take time to heal and work on yourself. I would really like to emphasize this point about life in general, and that is you either pay on the front end or you pay on the back end. And as I'm sure you surmise, what I mean by that is you prepare for a circumstance. So when you're in that circumstance or circumstances, you are prepared for it and you can deal with the issues having done work up front. That's much better than getting into a situation or a set of circumstances, not having prepared for it, and then having to deal with a lot of issues that then become a great deal more serious than they needed to be. It's like the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So without that long preamble, what I'm saying here basically is that after your divorce, or after separation really, which as you know usually comes before divorce, you need to really calm yourself down. I know it's a difficult time and you're dealing with a lot of issues. And you just really need to stop and think. Just don't scramble for companionship and go out there and start the hunt, because you need to give a lot of thought about yourself first. Are you ready for a relationship? What kind of a relationship do you want? Serious or casual? Are you just looking for a companion? Have you settled your finances down yet? What kind of a person are you looking for? How are you going to go after looking for that person? So think about all these things. It's a difficult time, and I do appreciate that. It's hard to sort of make a clear path to your thoughts. But before you start going out there and linking up with somebody and maybe looking for love in all the wrong places, to quote that old song, just try to get on that path to a solid situation rather than bouncing off the walls.
Well, also, if maybe you picked the wrong type of partner for your first partner, obviously it was the wrong because you got divorced. I mean, something didn't work right. So I believe, now I've never been divorced. Alan is my first husband, but I feel like that it's easy to blame the other person in any kind of a breakup, whether it's just a relationship or a marriage. It's easy to blame all the problems on the other person, but it really takes two people to, it's usually two people have issues. And so you do need to figure out maybe it's not that you're broken or whatever, but maybe you develop some bad habits when your relationship went sour. So I would say tip number 2 is to consider going through some therapy, especially if you did have a really nasty divorce, or if there was any kind of like strain outside the marriage. I would consider seeking a marriage and family therapist who can help you maybe like reestablish what is expected in a healthy relationship, and so you can just make sure you're not bringing like bad habits or bad communication skills into a second relationship or a second marriage.
I think that's good advice. We do have an entire episode on finances, and I think as you leave one relationship and you're considering another one, finances are extremely important. Not only getting your finances straight, which if you are in a divorce situation, separation, and you're grappling with like property settlement, spousal support, child support, all the things that come with it, depending on where you live and what the laws are and your relationship with your ex and whether you have children or whatever, it is a complicated situation, and it's painful, very painful for both you and your ex. You know, your ex is going to have to fight to survive financially, depending upon, their circumstance, and so are you. So it's really a tough environment, and you don't want to go from that environment unresolved into a new circumstance. So going back to my earlier point about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, figure out where you are financially before you embark upon seeking a new relationship. And when you have your circumstances settled at least reasonably well, and you consider a new relationship, consider how a new relationship is going to impact your finances. Somebody in our Facebook group addressed a question to us. It's a second marriage for both of them. One of the couple has 3 children from a prior marriage that are older. The other partner has 1 younger child from her previous marriage. And because the older partner has the majority of the assets, the wealth, even though they're doing well now, she's concerned about when that individual passes on, how are the assets going to be distributed between his children and her child? Will that child be provided for? So it's a complicated circumstance, and you need to think about that. So again, we cover a lot of these issues in our episode on finance, and things like, are you going to consider, do you need a prenuptial agreement? Do you have assets to protect? Does your potential partner have assets to protect? Are you going to have enough money after you consider child support, spousal support, property settlements to get a fresh start on a solid footing? So think about these things before they jump up and choke off any possible solid future relationship.
Yeah, so item number 4 after the finances is to explore your own interests. And then I would also combine that with number 5, which is to make some new friends who aren't connected to your old relationship. And so maybe you want to talk about what you did personally after your divorce, because you kind of did some interesting new hobbies.
Yes, I did. There were a lot of things that I wanted to try when after I was separated from my first wife. Just to give you kind of a brief list for your entertainment and viewing pleasure. I tried rollerblading, which was very popular at the time. And after a dislocated shoulder and almost a broken arm, I decided, also at that time I had just met Carrie. She said, I don't think that's a good idea. And the orthopedic surgeon that I was going to for resolution of these issues, he said, how'd this happen? I said, rollerblading. He said, I said, why do you say that? He said, it's good for business. Anyway, so I stopped rollerblading, and then I tried hiking. I signed up with the Sierra Club for an 8-session hiking course, which was actually kind of fun. I enjoyed it, although it almost killed me because I wasn't in shape really, even though we built up to a rather substantial hike in the midpoint of the 8 lessons. But at the 5th lesson was camping out on ice, and that was gong.
Really?
Yes, and that was a no-go.
Where would you do that in Southern California?
Up in the mountains in the wintertime. I think it was maybe in mid-state California, not Southern California. Would have been an on-ice camping trip. That didn't work for me. I'm a little city boy, city mouse. So anyway, and then something I did like, which also connected to the making new friends and actually meeting potential dating partners. I always enjoyed dancing, I mean, to a degree. And I signed up for an East Coast swing class 1 night a week where they had lessons. And it was a large group in like a church auditorium, not affiliated with the church, but they rented the space. And that was a lot of fun. And I did meet some new people. I don't think I actually met a lady to date, but I just enjoyed the companionship. But it was a lot of fun, and everybody was very cordial, and the music was great if you like that kind of thing.
Yoga?
I signed up for yoga for a few different reasons. One was to get the yoga experience. Another was to maybe meet somebody. And number 3, just to get out. You know, once you separate and you're kind of on your own, you do want to be around other people socially, and it's hard to do. So I signed up for yoga, and that was fun, but it didn't actually work out from meeting ladies. But it was a nice experience, and I enjoyed that. A 4th experience was, I think, it's a long list, I know, I don't want to bore you, but the next experience, and I'll stop there, was I started to go out to bars where they would have, you know, like where you meet people, and it was kind of a younger crowd because this is when I was like in my early 50s, and most of these people were between their early 20s and maybe their early 30s, and so when I went into these places, it was like a dinosaur. You know, going in there, the music was so loud I couldn't hear anybody. I couldn't really talk. All these people just had very different attitudes and interests, and they were drinkers, and I'm not a drinker. Anyway, at that time, before there was a no smoking rule in bars, it was very smoky, and I was an ex-smoker. So that episode almost killed me as an item in the list of 4. So anyway, it was about that time that I think that I met CARRIE, and my world changed.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
But in a way, it was kind of like a freeing experience because you were kind of forced, or you had the time to go out and do things that you maybe wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yes, and it gave me the opportunity, as CARRIE said, to do things I hadn't done before, to sort of taste other aspects of life to see whether I liked them or not. And it was an educational experience. It was a broadening experience. And I do want to emphasize that no matter how old you are, you can always enjoy or suffer new experiences, and you can learn. And it does broaden you and expand your horizons. And this episode of my life definitely did that.
Okay, and then I would say we'll put the whole list of these tips for recovering for divorce on our website, and I usually try to do a blog post associated with each episode, and that way everything's all in one place, like the link to the YouTube video, the link to the podcast episode, depending on how you want to listen or watch, and then all the tips and any resources. For instance, I think there's a book that is specifically about recovering from divorce, and I haven't read it, but it looked like it was highly rated on Amazon, so I'll see if I can dig that up, and I'll also include that in these in blog posts. But I think the last tip that we should cover here before we jump into the tips for a successful second marriage would be to reestablish and confirm your relationships with maybe your children, your family, or your friends who may have been involved in the old marriage. So maybe there were some, as you went through the divorce, some relationship challenges came up. I know it's probably difficult with children whether they're young or grown. And so you need to reconnect with them and reestablish your friendship outside of the marriage, but as like one-on-one.
Yes. Just one tip at the outset of this particular discussion is, and I believe I did not do this, but for sure on your interaction with your children from your prior marriage, do not discuss in any negative ways your ex. And depending upon the situation, that individual is either the mother or father of your children. And in most cases, your children will remain connected and close to your ex. So don't be disrespectful. I mean, that individual is either the mother or father of your children. And you have to remember that and consider that as far as the emotions of your children are going forward. A second thing is, do reach out to your children, not only during the separation and the divorce process, which may be difficult for you because these are times and you can be locked in battle with your ex, and it can be difficult, but do stay in touch with your children. If you're exploring new relationships, when you get to that point, if you are serious with an individual, you don't necessarily have to introduce that individual to your children, but if it looks serious, you may just want to make them aware of it so it doesn't come as like a shock. Oh, I've just become engaged and this is going to be your new stepmother or stepfather. Don't do that. Make it a gradual glide and sort of ease into that discussion. When you do stay in touch with your children, try to find things of mutual interest. Don't go back and rag on your first marriage experiences. Don't talk about, well, when you were little, your mommy or daddy and I used to do this or do that. Don't go there. Just look forward. Hey, would you guys like to go out for brunch? Would you like to go for a walk, a hike? Do you want to see my new apartment? Well, that may not be such a good idea, but try to find things that are away from your past relationship with your ex and try to move forward with your children. But do stay in touch. And just as an aside, when I did become serious with Carrie because of the substantial age gap, I did mention to one of my two daughters, who I think was in her 40s, early 40s, late 30s at the time, that I had developed a relationship. And she said, oh, and I said, yes. And I said, I just wanted you to know, you'll meet her at some point, but she is substantially younger. And my daughter said, how much younger, Dad? And I said, well, she's very mature, but I said, I think she's 23 years old. And my younger daughter, who's very intelligent, as both of my daughters are, and has a little edge to her, she said, well, 23. Well, how mature does she act? Like she's 24? Like she's 25? So it was obviously a shock. It took a while to sort of settle in. But over time, because Carrie is such a wonderful person, as are both my daughters, they both became acquainted with and fond of and respectful of Carrie. And we have a wonderful relationship.
She was only in her late 20s at that time.
Was she?
Yeah, because she hadn't even had her children yet.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Her first child had been born. Okay. Well, so she was...
This was a long time ago.
Yeah, so at that time, Carrie was 6 to 7 years younger than my younger daughter, which was, whoa!
I don't think it's that. It's like 5 years.
Her hair stood on end. 5 years? Well, whatever the difference was, it was remarkable, shall we say.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
just some thoughts on that point.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good. And I did go, even though I haven't been divorced personally, I have been a child of divorced parents. And I can say that my parents had a contentious divorce. And the thing that was terrible was when they were going through the divorce, was having my mom like complaining and almost like trying to manipulate me to somehow get involved. I mean, the last thing I'm going to do is try to be an intermediary, and children should never be an intermediary between parents. It's not appropriate.
Although I think that is common, where a lot of parents do that.
Yes, but it's not appropriate, it's not healthy, and so that it would definitely be, you're just really going to create more problems by doing that kind of stuff. So let's move on to our tips for successful second marriage. And of course, we're talking about age gap. So we're assuming that perhaps people who are listening to this have been divorced and are thinking about a second marriage, and with someone who's either much younger or older than themselves. So, because that's our experience. So our first tip, and we don't have to talk about all of these, but I will put them all in the blog post. I'll link that below. Try not to bring any emotional baggage into your second marriage.
I would like to say,
yeah.
if I may interrupt, Madam Chairman, this is a very difficult thing to do. After separation and divorce, and after all the pain and recriminations, if those happen, which they usually do, it is really difficult not to have scar tissue emotionally and carry that forward. And there can be certain hot buttons that your new significant other is not aware of. For example, if your ex had something that really drove you nuts, and your new significant other is not aware of that, and maybe that's a minor point that comes up during a conversation, and then it hits that hot button for you, and you say, "Don't say that to me. I don't like hearing that. That's not something I want to be called or talk about, or I don't do it that way." And then your new significant other, or your new partner, is shocked by that, and then that person is hurt. So you've already started to take apart a new relationship based on your old relationship. And again, I know this is hard to do. It's kind of like an emotional cleansing. But if you do have sore points, hot button issues, scar tissue, once you get to know and become comfortable with your new partner, lay these things out, and say, this is a real sensitive area for me, and I hope this doesn't, become something that's important to you, that you're going to pound on me for because I can't stand it. I've suffered this before, and it won't work.
And this is also calls for potentially going to therapy.
Yeah.
Because a therapist is meant to be a person who's objective. They're not emotionally tied. Your issues are not their issues. A therapist is there to offer perspective and to help you work through your things, even if you have to go as a couple or you go as an individual. But again, if you're coming, whether you were divorced or you're coming from a bad relationship, we've all had bad relationships, whether it's with our parents or a partner or a previous husband or wife. But again, if you're not working on your issues and you're just taking them from one relationship to another, what we don't want is for you to have a second divorce.
Yes, and an important point here is that if during your first marriage you went to a marriage counselor and that did not help, that doesn't mean you shouldn't seek therapy or counseling for a new relationship, maybe with the same counselor or a new one, because many marriages are damaged beyond the point. I'm not saying this is always the case, but if the old marriage was damaged beyond the point where therapy was not helpful, it doesn't mean that therapy won't work in a new relationship. And at this point, I just have to comment on a cartoon that I saw many years ago where it shows a marriage counselor on one side of a big desk and a husband and wife seeking therapy on the other side, and the marriage counselor is pointing at the wife and giving her really a severe lecture as the husband is leaning forward and handing money to the marriage counselor's hand is extended onto the desk. So hopefully your marriage counselor would not be biased, or therapy person would not be biased in any respect.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in individual therapy too. I've actually never done a group or marriage therapy counseling. I've only done individual therapy, and it's been incredibly helpful over the years.
Right, now we're not talking about electroshock therapy or prefrontal lobotomy.
No, it's just talk therapy. It's like talking to a friend who is actually trained and can give you really good advice and doesn't get emotionally involved. So if you've never been to therapy, it can be really transformative. I mean, life-changing in the most positive way. And it can take some time to find the right therapist. So you can often do like little introductory sessions, like maybe 10 minutes, just to make sure that you're a good fit.
Right.
And you just have to keep, looking till you find the right person.
Yes, it's important to find a therapist that you know is going to help you. Rodney Dangerfield used to talk about his first experience with a therapist, where he told the therapist in the first session that he had suicidal tendencies. And the therapist said, "That's fine, but you have to pay in advance from now on."
Tip number 2 for our tips for a successful second marriage, and this one I think is really has been helpful for us, and it's to start fresh with your belongings and maybe even your home or your apartment or wherever you're living. And the reason that I say this is because Alan, I mean, this was easy for us because Alan moved out of his family home when he was divorced or separated and then divorced. And he set up his apartment, and then after we had been dating for I think a good 3 years, we decided to move in together. So we ended up moving into a larger apartment, and it was like recreated that experience of what you always imagine, like young couples going through getting their first home together. We really started from scratch, and I think this is important because it just helps make that break between the first relationship and the second relationship or the previous relationship. And it was just like, we have a lot of special memories. We talk about these times a lot of these early days of our relationship, and it just feels special, like we were building something.
Yes, and just, I know I keep throwing these stories at you, but since I have been around since the Pleistocene age, I have had a lot of experiences, I guess, like most of us.
What is that?
What, the Pleistocene age?
Yeah.
I'll tell you later, dear. Anyway, in our history lesson, maybe it was the Mesozoic era, I'm not really sure. But anyway, one experience I had personally was with my first wife. We were looking at buying a home, and I asked the realtor, why is this seller, if you can tell me, why is this seller so anxious to sell this house? Because it was very attractively priced. And she said, well, confidentially, she said, this is the man's second marriage. And his wife refuses to sleep in this house because it was where this man had his first wife and had this many long years with his first wife. She said, I'm not going to stay there. And so they had to rent a home because she wouldn't set foot in this house. So the man had no option but to sell it and to move on, of course, with his new wife and a new home. So, people are funny. Not funny. I mean, I can understand that. But it also, as Carrie said, is like a cleansing experience. I did love my the home I had with my first wife. I enjoyed the decor, and I had a lot of personal things there I had obtained over the years, mementos and whatever. But hey, life moves on. I looked at this as a change. I didn't want to create a vacuum for my ex-wife or for my children when they would come to visit her at that home because they grew up there. So I didn't take a lot of things, just a few clothing, a few personal items, and I had an entirely new decor, modern as opposed to very traditional, in my new apartment. And it was refreshing, and it did feel good, and I think it kind of set me on a different path.
And so I don't know that for the next tip, I don't know that we need to talk too much about finances, but except to say that from my understanding, most marriage, like money problems are either maybe the number one cause of marital problems, whether it's a first marriage, second marriage, third marriage. And so I would just say that being cautious about your finances and just everything that we've talked about in our previous episodes about finances. We have 2 comprehensive episodes that I will link in the show notes. And it's just, it can't be overstated that if you have financial problems, it doesn't mean that you can't get married again, but you need to deal with them and have a plan for dealing with them and like pretending they don't exist, or just letting, you know, your debt get worse and worse and worse, is not going to lead to a good result.
Right, and I do want to emphasize, now that I'm older and wiser, and fortunately I didn't make any mistakes in this area. My children were actually on their own, supporting themselves when I separated from my first wife. But for those of you that have small children and an ex-wife or ex-husband, whatever the case may be, that's not working, or that's working and not making a lot of money, you can't be selfish. You have to be considerate of your children. You have to be considerate of your ex, because they're going to be in a panic. I mean, two incomes go to one, or one income that's now gone. So how are they going to survive? I mean, put yourself in their position. So it's difficult, you know, but you made the commitment initially. You committed to somebody you're going to take a path down the road in the future with them. And now that you're out of their future, it's a whole different world, a frightening world for everybody. So do be considerate of your ex. Do be considerate of your children. Think about the risks that they face on their life going forward. So stand up to your responsibilities and do the best you can financially for yourself and for, you know, the family, hopefully, that you haven't left behind.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it said, and I'm not offering this as advice, I'm just saying that I've heard this, that if you have young children in your divorce, you know, you may even have to postpone your relationships, or even considering a second marriage, until your young children are, you know, adults or out of the house, because they really do need to be your first priority if they're young. You know, you made these children, you've got to take care of them. So I think we can maybe talk about a little bit about blending families. Now, Alan and I don't have direct experience with this because I did not have children when we got married. Alan's children were grown. And so it really was, I mean, of course it took work for his daughters to be comfortable with me, for us to develop relationships, for us to respect each other and care for each other and even get to know each other. But I can just imagine that if two people are coming together and they each have young children, this is something to be really taken very, very slowly and cautiously. Because I'm sure with financial problems, I'm sure family problems are equally as high in terms of causing divorce or conflicts. So we have 3 more points we thought we would cover. Number 5 is work on something or grow something new with your spouse. So even if you don't have children together, it's nice to have something that you both grow together. Maybe it's a garden. Maybe you adopt a pet. Maybe you adopt a child. Maybe you have a child together.
Maybe it's a new hobby, you know, like going hiking, maybe like rollerblading.
I think for Alan and I, Alan and me,
Us.
For us, we ended up having pets, and that especially actually brought a cat that I had when I was in college, but then we adopted another cat who was a kitten, and unfortunately she died in 2018, but she was our baby, so we were devastated when we lost her. But we had so much fun because she was a really great cat, and she was like our baby, and she was something that we shared, and we have adopted 2 more kittens since then, and they are our new babies, and it's fun. We call each other, you know, the mommy and the daddy for the cats, and they are like our little fur babies.
Not replacing my daughters. Well, yes, and then also Carrie has drawn me into her blog and her YouTube channels, which I've enjoyed, and we do talk a lot about that.
And now we have this YouTube channel that we're building together.
Yes, and we have enjoyed travel together and the outdoors. We have the same interests as far as the amount of effort and where we like to go and things of that sort. So we have developed that. Focusing on the next item, which is good communication. This is point number 6, and communication is essential. If you're hurt, if you're angry, whatever the case is, don't carry grudges. Don't hold it in. Discuss it with your new partner. Is there, we have a question from the audience?
No, I have a point.
Oh, she has a point.
This is something that I have worked very hard on with Alan, because this is a bad habit that he brought from his first marriage. And that is, when he would get upset, he would just shut down emotionally.
I'm a retread.
He would not, I knew something was wrong, but he wouldn't tell me.
I was damaged good.
So this is something we really had to work on. And thank goodness I mean, of course, everybody gets upset and everybody needs some time to calm down. But if you don't talk for 2 days, trust me, that is not good communication.
Yeah, now I'm perfect.
Yes, you are perfect. So, again, if this is something that you need counseling to help you with, but if you are from an age or from a relationship where you just shut down emotionally when you're upset, your new partner is not going to like that. And I can speak from experience.
Carrie puts a finger up like this, it's important. I think we morphed into item number 7, which is address problems as soon as they occur.
Yes, and try to work through your issues.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that the one of the issues is when you're in a second marriage or relationship, you've already been through a divorce. And so I think, like, for me, I've only been married one time, and I really only want to be married one time. I never want to be divorced. Divorce is like not even on my radar. So for me, any issues that come up, I'm committed 110% to working through. Whereas somebody who's been through a divorce, I don't know if this is a thing, but maybe in their mind they're like, well, there's always divorce.
43. Good morning.
I want to make a point here, although the topic of this episode is recovering from divorce and considering a second marriage. For those of you that are not married, and so you're not considering a divorce, but you're in a relationship or considering a relationship, because you may be the younger of the age gap partnership, and so you may not have a divorce behind you, maybe the other person does. But remember that you don't want to enter into any kind of a long-term relationship, as Carrie said, thinking that if it doesn't work out, you'll just get a divorce. Don't think that way. As Carrie said, it is painful. It is expensive, depending upon your circumstances. It's financially threatening. If you have children, it can be devastating as far as your future is concerned. I have talked to people over the years. I may have mentioned this in a previous episode, where I was in Las Vegas once at the 21 table, some casino, and I was talking with this lady who was the dealer. She was very nice. It was very quiet. There weren't many other people at the table, so she and I were chatting to the extent that we could in that environment. And on their name tag, they had her first name, and in this casino would say where their hometown was, because so many people, never lived in Las Vegas until they moved there for a job. So she said she was from Arizona, said in her tag, and I said, what brought you to Las Vegas? She said, like this, I had a boyfriend, and she said, I had a great job. I was a municipal employee, worked for the county, had a great future, great pension, good salary, and I met this guy, and it was a hot romance, and we were going to get married, we were engaged, and blah blah blah, and then he wanted to move to Las Vegas, and told her that it was going to be great, he was going to have a great job, and things were going to be wonderful, great future. So she said, we moved to Las Vegas, and 3 months later he found another gal, and boom, he was gone. I lost my job, and I got stuck here, and here I am working in a casino. Mm. So you be careful when you make these decisions. You make a commitment, And boy, it sticks, you know. It can be hard to get away from. Forever.
Yeah, I think
Forever.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
So I hope that you found this episode helpful. We've enjoyed putting it together for you. And
It's been a laugh a minute.
so thank you for watching, and please do subscribe and give us a like, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, and don't forget to give us questions too. We love your questions. Stay well.
Bye.
We love you all. Bye-bye.